Should the Baltimore Ravens make a trade for wide receiver? Well, Bleacher Report, last word on sports, they sure think so. Welcome to Ravens Rundown. I'm your host, Joey Petersen. That is what we're talking about on today's episode. But before we get into any of that, I got some great news for you, okay? We will be live starting at 12 p.m. Eastern Time for Sunday's game against the Commanders. This is what you're going to see on YouTube. That's hopefully what you're going to click on YouTube because we have a blast on these watch parties. So come join us. We'll be talking ball. We'll be watching ball, hanging out. It's going to be a grand time. 12 p.m. Eastern Time Sunday. Be there or be square. All right, let's get into the wide receiver trade targets, I should say. Number one, and this one's coming from Last Word on Sports, is Christian Kirk. Anthony Palacios of Last Word on Sports had this to say about the Jacksonville receiver. Kirk could make an immediate impact for Baltimore down the stretch, and they're not dealing with plenty of injuries in comparison to Kansas City. Adding a standout receiver could propel the Ravens toward the Super Bowl, so someone like Kirk might be vital without compromising their cap space. And that's what you got to think about when you're the Baltimore Ravens because they don't have a lot of money. But let's go and get to know Christian Kirk a little bit better. He's in the third year of a 4-year, $72 million contract with Jacksonville. He's in his 7th season in the NFL, 3rd with the Jaguars. But the thing that gives me the most pause is he's only eclipsed 1,000 yards one time in his career. And it's not like he's played with awful quarterbacks, right? You can say what you want about Trevor Lawrence. You can say what you want about Kyler Murray. But with a guy with his skill set, you kind of got to think maybe that should be a little bit higher than he is. This year, 21 receptions, 257 yards, 12.2 yards per catch, and a touchdown. His best year by far was 2 years ago in 2022. 1,100 yards, 13.2 yards per catch, 8 touchdowns, his highest in his yardage and his reception and touchdown in his entire career. And this is what it comes down for me with Christian Kirk. If he was paid how he should be and what his production has earned him, I would say, I'd make the trade. I would. But in my opinion, I don't think he's worth 4 years, $72 million. I just don't. He's a good wide receiver. But I don't think he's 4 years, $72 million worth. What is that? $18 million a year? You're going to look me in the eyes and tell me Christian Kirk deserves $18 million a year when he's been in the NFL for 7 years and he's only eclipsed 1,000 yards one time? I just don't think he's worth that. And the Ravens don't have enough cap space to put on a contract like that. At least not one for Christian Kirk. Again, I think he's a good wide receiver. I don't think he's worth the money that he's being paid right now. I just don't. But I want to hear from you guys, okay? This is going to be the pinned comment on today's video. Should the Ravens trade for Christian Kirk? If you think so, type T for trade. If you don't think so, go ahead and type P for pass. You're about to get hit with a YouTube ad break. So to make that time go by faster, go down, find the pinned comment, and comment your answer for me. Number 2, and this one's a little bit more intriguing for me, and I'll go into that in just a little bit, but it's Darius Slayton. This one's coming from Bleacher Report. Alex Ballantyne, he had this to say. Baltimore has one of the most unique situations thanks to Lamar Jackson. So they don't have to have some kind of wide receiver depth that other teams have. That being said, it would be good for the Ravens to add one more dynamic weapon in the passing game. Darius Slayton is an underrated burner whose deep speed would give the Ravens a dangerous option. Now, coming up, I'll give my full thoughts on Darius Slayton and his fit and if the Ravens should make that call or not. But before we get into any of that, I got to give a shout out on today's sponsor, and that, of course, is Game Time. Game Time is the best place to go for the best seats and the lowest prices, and it's all guaranteed. If you are so excited that football season is here and in full swing, then you're going to want to give Game Time a shot. It's the only place I go when trying to get any tickets to college or NFL games. Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets to see your favorite teams play live even easier. Game Time Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. The tool highlights the best deals, including great and amazing deals, which are the highest value seats at the time. For some events, Game Time Picks also identifies a super deal, which is the best seat value in the venue. Guys, we already talked about it. I'll be live for Sunday's game against the Commanders, and the only excuse you have to not join me there is if you're going to go to the game. And if you go to the game, you better be using Game Time, right? They got the prices listed there. You click into the seat that you want. You get to see the views from your seat in a panoramic view, and it's all for the lowest prices guaranteed. And the best part is we here at Chat Sports are kind enough to offer you $20 off on your first purchase if you just use the promo code Chat Sports. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code Chat Sports for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code CHATSPORTS for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? It's game time. All right, let's look a little bit deeper into Darius Slayton's career this year. Off to a pretty solid start. 18 receptions, 244 yards, 13.6 yards per catch, and a touchdown. Now, he's had 2 back-to-back years before this with 700 more yards. He's had 4 seasons in his entire career with 700 or more receiving yards. He's in the second year of a 2-year, $12 million contract. He's in the 6th season in the NFL, and he has spent his entire career, unfortunately, in New York, being a New York Jet. Now, the thing that intrigues me the most about a guy like Darius Slayton is the amount of production he's been able to have in his career. 4 years in 6 years total. 4 years, over 700 yards. He's been able to do that as a New York Giant with Daniel Jones as his quarterback. That says something to me because when you look at the last 4 years for the Giants and their rankings in pass defense, 31st, 26th, 31st, 29th, it's been atrocious. Yet this is a guy that in 4 years has gotten over 700 yards receiving, okay? And I'm not going to ask him to come in here and be our wide receiver 1. We've already got one of those, and he's pretty dang good at it. But man, being a wide receiver 2 option, Darius Slayton being a true burner, a guy who is a deep threat last year 20% of the time, asking him to come in here and do that same thing and give this offense a new little wrinkle, it's really intriguing to me. And another great part about Darius Slayton is not only is he cheap contract-wise, 2 years, $12 million, but I don't think the trade would be that much either. And I'm not just pulling this out of my butt, okay? I asked Giants Now, our Chat Sports host, Marshall Green, okay, what do you think a trade for Darius Slayton would be? And he knows the Giants better than anybody. He told me I think it'd be around a 5th-round pick. And that sounds fair to me. So Darius Slayton for a 2025 5th-round pick. You get a guy in there who could be a true deep threat, who could take the top off the defense. I think that could be pretty good. So pick one for me out of these 2 guys. Type CK for Christian Kirk. Type DS for Darius Slayton. Now coming up is my final thoughts on the receiver I'd want the most out of those 2, or just my final thoughts on this receiver core as a whole, and if this front office even needs to go out and make a trade. So what I think is I just don't think it's necessary. I don't. I think that what you've got in that building, in the receiver room, is good enough. And then when you pair it with what this tight end room looks like, I think it's more than good enough, okay? If you look at these tight ends this past game against Cincinnati, Isaiah Likely, 3 receptions, 13 yards, 2 touchdowns. Charlie Kolar had a breakout game. 3 receptions, 64 yards, and a touchdown. And Mark Andrews finally woke up this season. 4 receptions, 55 yards, no touchdowns. Okay, and so I think the fact that you got 3 legitimate pass catchers in your tight end room, I think that kind of makes up for the fact that you might not have the most solid wide receiver 2 or wide receiver 3. And still, even saying that, Rashod Bateman, Nelson Agholor, they've impressed me. They've done everything they need to do and everything they can do this season. But I think what this comes down to the most, if you're talking about adding a guy like Darius Slayton or adding a guy like Christian Kirk, is there's only one football. okay? There's only one football to be shared. Who remembers a couple years ago when we were talking about, not we on this channel, because I wasn't here a couple of years ago, but the sports world was talking about the Nets, right? With James Harden, Kyrie Irving, Kevin Durant. And they're saying, who's going to stop this team, right? Who's going to stop them? And I think something we all failed to remember was there's one basketball, okay? And in football, there's one football. And so sure, in theory and on paper, if you get all the best guys on one team, that might do well, but you got to think about egos, you got to think about contracts, you got to think about a lot of things. And you got a guy in Lamar Jackson who can run it better than any quarterback in the NFL. You have the best running back in the NFL with Derrick Henry. You got Zay Flowers, you got Rashod Bateman, Nelson Agholor, and you got 3 tight ends who can catch the ball as well. So I just don't think it's feasible. And in my opinion, offense isn't the place that we should be looking. As of right now, in week 5, if you look at the left side of the screen, the offense ranks first in the NFL in yards per game with 447.6. Second in the NFL in points per game with 29.4. And if you look at the defense, yards per game, they're 19th, letting up 340.6. And points per game, they're 26th, letting up 25.2. So if you're going to spend any kind of draft picks or if you're going to take on additional salaries, in my opinion, do it on the defensive side of the ball. That's the side that's needing most help this season. So do you think the Ravens need a trade for a wide receiver? If you think yes, type Y. And if you think no, go ahead and type in that comment section down below. At the end of the day, I don't think they need to, guys. I just don't. I think they got enough talent, but you've heard me, so I'm not going to talk anymore on that. Thanks so much for joining us. Thanks so much for making it to the end of this video. If you haven't already, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. We're on our push to 20K. We're so close. Turn on notifications so that way you're right by the channel when we go live on Sunday because it's going to be a blast.